Booyah, roll call. My name is Brittany.
What? Yeah.
I cheer so strong.
If you're a fan of the 2000s classic Bring It On, despite being a flawless film revered by many, the same cannot be said for most, if not all, of the follow-ups, which is why most people tend to think of Bring It On as a standalone movie rather than a franchise filled with mostly straight-to-DVD movies. That being said, Bring It On All or Nothing, the second follow-up movie to Bring It On? Yes, second follow-up. Bring It On Again was the first sequel to Bring It On, but it came and went, never to be thought of again. I've never even bothered to see that one. But Bring It On All or Nothing is the standout. It's not good, per se. It leans all the way into being as racist and stereotypical as possible. The dancing is terrible, and it's aged even worse.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell.
What are you doing, Hayden? What are you doing? But the movie still was a good time. I love this movie. And I decided to rewatch it recently with the knowledge that it isn't good, but I still had a ball. And I still love it. It just feels good watching it. That being said, Bring It All or Nothing is everything Bring It On isn't, for better or for worse. I covered this in my video, Why Bring It On's Torrance shipment is iconic, but in a nutshell, Bring It On is about how, unbeknownst to the new captain of a white cheerleading squad, Torrance, her squad, the Toros, were champions only because they were able to successfully steal and appropriate the dance routines of a black cheerleading squad, the East Compton Clovers, because the Clovers did not have the money to compete against them because they go to a systemically under-resourced school. When Torrance learns of this, although she wants to win and recognizes the Clovers as her squad's only true competition, she does her best to try to win on her own merit by getting her squad new routines and trying to help the Clovers get into the competition. Bring It On is an impressive film because it takes what you think is just an early 2000s teen movie about cheerleaders competing against other cheerleaders and packs a lot of nuance into a film that's ultimately, but quietly, about cultural appropriation, race, systemic inequality and disadvantages, starved school systems, and more. Although, despite my praise for the movie itself, it should be noted that in real life, the actual creation of Bring It On is a real life illustration on how not to be an ally and how black people are used and discarded. Because believe it or not, Bring It On was not originally meant to center Kirsten Dunst's character Torrance. It was actually supposed to follow all of the girls equally, but you know what the studio did? They made Torrance the protagonist. And when they realized it was the Clovers, led by the incredible Gabrielle Union and the 90s sensation Black, rest in peace Natina Reed, that tested super well, instead of actually giving their characters and story the time and attention they deserved in the movie, which is what the audience wanted, they instead cut most of their story, but made them film scenes that would only be used in the trailer in order to trick people who wanted to see those black women into seeing the movie. It should be understood out the gate that while Bring It On does center around what happens after the new captain of a white squad finds out they've been stealing and appropriating the routines of a black squad for years and were able to get away with it because the black squad didn't have the resources to compete, which is all the result of systemic racism, the movies and the characters themselves are not overtly racist on their face. It's all a lot more subtle, thoughtful, and nuanced. Although, you can smell the hate and bigotry dripping off Big Red and Courtney. Whereas, Bring It On All or Nothing does its best to have their characters be either as overtly racist or stereotypical as possible.
It's Hip Hop Barbie and her Wu-Tang Clan.
And the movie would not be trying to embody the early 2000s if it didn't find time to call bad bitches fat who were not fat in the slightest. Shout out to my bitches Brianna and Carisha, and extra shout out to Carisha, who was played by Giovanni Samuels, who was beloved by all black girls born in the 90s. And also shout out to Gary Leroy Gray, who plays Tyson and is also the voice of mad black cartoon characters. If you didn't know, now you do. And another thing worth pointing out about the difference between Bring It On and Bring It All or Nothing, namely the difference between Torrance, an ally, and Brittany, someone who's not. And Bring It On, despite the fact that Courtney and Whitney try to pressure Torrance not to let Missy on the squad because they want to be discriminating against Missy because they think she's a lesbian, Torrance was not with the shit. She immediately checks that.
I'm the captain. I'm pulling rank, and you can fall in line or not. If we're gonna be the best, we have to have the best. Missy's the poo, so take a big whiff.
Compare that to Brittany, who in Bring It On All or Nothing, the moment Winnie decides that she wants to call Brianna fat and pressures Brittany to go and do it, Brittany immediately goes and fat shames that girl in front of the entire squad.
Your weight, Brianna.
No, it's not. I would just a couple pounds more than last year.
And that was pushing it.
I didn't realize.
Well, look, just lay off the snacks and with the extra workouts, the weight should come right off.
What if it doesn't? Put it this way.
Pacific Vest has never had a fat cheerleader.
So it should surprise no one that while Torrance Shipman demonstrated how to be an ally, Bring It On All or Nothing's protagonist Brittany is the perfect example of how not to be an ally. The story for Bring It On All or Nothing is a simple one. A rich white girl, Brittany, played by fine-ass Hayden Panettiere, is the cheerleading captain at her rich white school. She's the most popular and dates the star football player who's a douchebag pressuring her for sex, but that's neither here nor there to the film. Her mom and dad tell her that her dad got fired and the company is transferring them to Crenshaw Heights, which makes no sense, by the way, because how you get fired but the company moving him somewhere else? So do you have a job or not? Anyway, she's forced to go live with the in Crenshaw Heights and attend their school that she thinks she's above, but ends up on the black cheerleading squad that has to then compete against her old squad. The storyline is a simple one, but it's how they do it that's wild and in stark contrast with the original Bring It On. Torrance and Brittany represent the differences between cultural appreciation and appropriation. In the original Bring It On, unbeknownst to Torrance, the previous captain of her squad, Big Red, was stealing routines from the East Compton Clovers, and that's how they'd been winning championships all those years. And when Torrance learns that they'd been stealing the Clovers routines because Missy drags her ass to their school to watch them perform, Torrance is sick to her stomach as she watches them perform because she knows they're the best and she doesn't know how she's gonna win without those routines. And her knowing they're the best is a fact she openly stated throughout the movie. But despite the fact that Torrance wants nothing more than to win and she recognizes them as the best and that they only won because they've been using their routines, she not only still tries to ensure that the Clovers get into the competition, she works hard to get her squad new routines based on inspiration from her own white forefathers. She doesn't try to appropriate their style or create something in that vein. Now, let's compare that to Brittany. When Brittany first sees the Crenshaw Heights cheerleaders perform, they're unveiling their brand new Shibuya routine to their cafeteria.
We got some new shit for y'all. Yeah. Shabuya, shabuya roll call. Shabuya, shabuya roll call.
My name is Letty.
Yeah.
I like to party.
Yeah.
When I shake it,
Yeah.
the boys say, "Hi, mommy."
She stands directly in front of them, staring them down in silent, unimpressed judgment, which we know because when Camille, played by Solange, asked her whether she liked the performance, she doesn't answer. She instead goes, "I didn't know you were a cheerleader." To which Solange retorts, "I'm not a cheerleader, I'm the cheerleader. I'm captain." And Brittany scoffs and goes, "So, I was the captain at my old school," which tells us what Brittany thinks about them, their school, and their squad, that they're beneath her. Because we know Brittany believes the cheerleaders run shit and that the cheerleading captain is the head bitch in charge.
Yeah, fine for you guys. You're old. Your life is over. I'm a senior, my boyfriend's a quarterback, and I'm a cheerleader! Damn it!
So the reason she thinks it's irrelevant when Camille tells her she's captain is because she sees them and their squad as beneath her. And she's sure to convey this to them, both then and when she shows up at their cheerleading auditions for the sole purposes of proving they don't have shit on her.
See what it takes to really be a warrior. This is more like it. Now pay attention, 'cause I'm only gonna say this once. Now.
Now you can start.
And if you doubted that she thinks she and her old squad are better than them, she explicitly said it.
Cause I hear PV is a cheer or die type of squad.
Huh, your squad couldn't touch us.
Yet, despite the fact that all she can seem to show Crenshaw Heights, even after she joins their squad, is contempt, and she continues to tell them that her old squad is better than them the moment she's not in their face. At the first opportunity to show up the girls from her old squad, who she claims are better than them, she outright steals the same brand new Shibuya routine she watched in perform with a scowl on her face that she couldn't bring herself to compliment.
Shabuya, shabuya roll call. My name is Brittany.
What? Yeah.
I cheer so strong.
Not only isn't she an ally, she's big red. And by the way, while we're pointing out her hypocrisy, she tells Camille their routines are too vulgar.
You can't do that.
Nah, girl, you can't do that.
Judges take off points for vulgarity.
But look at her again when she's stealing the Shibuya routine. That's her shaking ass, right? Okay, okay. And she fixing them out to lecture Crenshaw Heights about vulgarity in these moves so they can't do them. But look at what her squad was doing. She tells them that the judges take off points for that kind of vulgarity. Meanwhile, her squad doing that and been winning for years. And look how she starts talking and dressing the minute she gets cool with the
You've lost your cheer sanity if you think this pathetic little squad can even compete with us.
Oh, I know they can. So you better bring it all, white girl.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
Again, appreciation versus appropriation. Additionally, while Torrance is also a rich, or at least well-off white girl who's undoubtedly privileged in her own right, it's way, way, way more understated. Way more. Torrance isn't pretentious, materialistic, arrogant, or obnoxious. The only reason we even know she has money is because she's able to get her father to give the Clovers the money they need to enter the competition, an appropriate use of her privilege as an ally. Whereas, let me show you how Brittany gives it up.
Want some?
Oh, no, you did.
Come on, man.
OMG, look what you did.
Well, it's not like it's real.
For real? What?
And how would you know? Because this one.
Where was she raised? Where was she raised? You bump into somebody and cause them to drop their bag, and instead of saying sorry, you say, bitch, f you and your fake bag. And beyond not being an ally, she's simply just not built like my girl Torrance. Torrance's boyfriend Aaron was a deadbeat douchebag, but he was a deadbeat douchebag behind her back. She ain't know he was like that.
I know I haven't always been there for you since I went to college. It's been a rough transition for both of us. I still care about you as much as I ever did. You know that, right?
You do?
Of course.
The minute she found out, she dumped him and read him for filth.
I guess that's it. You were too busy to believe in me. Oh, no, but wait. You weren't too busy to sell me out to Courtney and Whitney, were you? Now I'm confused. I hope you're not too busy to hear this. Kiss my ass, Aaron.
And I also think it's worth mentioning that Torrance's boyfriend is not a star football player or quarterback. He's actually a male cheerleader from the beginning. Again, a progressive queen. Whereas Brittany's boyfriend is an outright piece of shit every second he's on the screen and in her face.
Sweetie. You sound like such a virgin.
I am a virgin.
I'm a quarterback, babe. People expect me to score.
And even after Amber tells Brittany that he's been around with Winnie's trifling wannabe Brittany ass, Brittany still goes with him to homecoming. She doesn't break up with him until Winnie felt the need to announce it to the school that she was him. By the way, Winnie is a loser. I just had to say that. Imagine saying this and not offing yourself immediately.
I had sex with Brad Warner. How do you like that, Brittany? I finally beat you at something. You are such a loser.
What Brittany and Torrance do have in common, though, is that both their romantic leads that they replaced their boyfriends with were entitled nice guys, who think that if they flirted with a woman a few times, she's obligated to reciprocate their romantic interest and that they get to yell at her for having a boyfriend they never even asked her about. All in all, I love Bring It On All or Nothing, but Brittany is a perfect example of who not to be. Y'all should subscribe to the Patreon. I put, for the people who want to hear me doing all my cursing, we put the uncensored versions of every recap on the Patreon. So do that.